for the last, few months, in fact, quite a long time, we've been doing a lot of talking around dance and kind of like, I think, quite, in a way, complex and diverse subjects. And yet something that's really, really fascinating me a lot, and at the moment, is this idea, which is more of the practice of dance. So the way I see it, people come to class and they kind of dance, which is fine. And then in the past, I've tried to, in inverted commas, guide them a little bit by saying, but if you do it this way, you're going to have a different experience. If you do it that way, you'll have a different experience. And in the past, maybe I wasn't doing it very well, but people got a little bit upset. Some people left, some people complained, and then I just left it. But this year I've been exploring it a lot, and especially with putting a course together called Free to Move. And I start to think that, as much as conscious dance and the things we do are it's free, it's expressive, it's us, it's everything that we love to do and we love to dance. I can't help feeling that there's more to it, and that there is a, for want of a better word, a technical side to conscious dance, and that that would allow one's experience to expand. I'll come back to that anyway. And I see it a little bit like, if you're playing tennis and you go like, oh, well, I just want to play tennis and that's what I want to do, great. But you would never walk onto a tennis court, say in Wimbledon or something competitive, going like, oh, I'm here just because I like playing tennis. To get there, you would have had a coach, you would have practiced all sorts of things, and been exposed to a whole lot of technique and movement and ways of being, and that so that when you get to the court, that all is put to one side, but you then can play a magnificent game. And I think of it like that a little bit. I think when we get to the dance, then that's it. We are in the dance. But sometimes if we put in a little bit of work, that dance experience can be great. It can be deepened. It can be enriched. So as I was thinking about all of this, I came across this quote on Facebook, which I thought was quite interesting. So Jamal Roberts is a dancer in the Alvin Ailey, I think the Alvin Ailey dance company in New York. And what he's saying is that, I love this quote, the power of dance is so much bigger than that of the dancer, which is me, the individual. It is a divine act of generosity to make the world a better place. And so often we talk about, how when we dance and we are in the dance, we bring beauty and we bring something to the world and to the people around us. I mean, of course, he's talking in the capacity of performance, but I think it applies equally to us, that when we are in that space, that we can make the world a better place. And I think throughout this talk, let's just remember that, because I don't think, as it might sound a bit technical, I don't want anybody to think that it's kind of like that's what I think we should be doing, or that's what dance is. And then he goes on to say that I think our bodies are beautiful in the ways that we use our bodies. There are so many ways that you can portray beauty, and that sentence for me is stood out, that there are so many ways. And so often in many of the talks that we've had, I've spoken about how we dance in a particular way. We have a habitual way of movement and a habitual way of behavior, and we bring that into the dance. And which is fine, but that's like one way. And if one were to expand that and look for different ways, then one of the ways in which we can do that is to enter into this idea of just becoming aware of what I call the technical aspects or the practical aspects of dance, which is the elements of dance. So they're kind of like three reasons for me, just for the moment in which we dance. So the one is where we have some kind of external locus like Jamar, and we perform. So it's an external locus of expression because we are performing to the choreography, and we are doing it to in the sense from outside. The dance originates outside. And then there is an internal locus of dance, which I think is more what we do rather than as performers, where we are expressing. So we're connecting with inside, we're connecting with ourselves, and we give that expression. So the dance comes from inside. But at the same time, there is another internal locus, or another way of looking at dance, which is not so much the expression outwards of what I'm feeling, but to induce the feeling. So I use movement, and I use very particular movement and music in a very particular way, which I think are the elements of dance, to induce emotion. So it's not always about me feeling something inside and then expressing it, but that maybe I can do something in the dance to shift what's happening inside, or to awaken something that's happening inside, or to connect with something that I haven't experienced before inside. And for me, that is the key of the dance of healing, of development. So so why, so I think to myself, why look at elements of dance? And I think in the context of what we are doing, so in the context of conscious dance, we're not just dancing. Of course, we are dancing, but it's not just dancing. It's called conscious dance because it's an active engagement with the dance, and we actively engage with the dance in two ways that I think very simply. One is intention. What is my intention in doing this dance or dancing in this moment? And that is a huge subject in itself. It's not always like, oh, I just want, ABC. And attention. And the attention for me is the conscious part of conscious dance. It's like the more I become aware of my dance and my movements and what I'm doing and what I'm feeling, the more it becomes conscious dance. So there's the experience of dance then for me depends on two aspects. The one is the title of this talk, which is, it's called The Elements of Dance. And each element of dance has various qualities. So there are various combinations, and I'll show you. But if you take the element of dance and the quality, then you're going to, more often than not, guide your dance into a particular experience. So in biodanza, we call that a vivencia, that we will have a particular vivencia. So what are these various experiences that we are seeking and that we are creating? And I think that they all depend on intention. So coming back to conscious dance, it's like, what is the intention? And out of that, I can guide the dance to a particular experience. And I've just put a few here of things that, very generally that people can look at. And by the way, I have a fantastic paper that did a whole analysis of why people dance. I think I must share that one day. But anyway, that's just by the way. So the intention can be self-awareness. I just want to know more of me and who I am, and feel myself as a man, or feel myself as the age I am, or feel myself as, as a Greek, or whatever it is. So it's like self-awareness and being able to develop that. Or self-development. I'm kind of dancing now because I want to overcome my shyness. I'm dancing now because I want to feel a little bit more extrovert. I'm dancing now to whatever, so we have all sorts of things. And then there can be the healing. In other words, especially in dances which create those situations where we can revisit our instincts. So, for example, if I have trauma, not yeah, if I have trauma, or if I have a bad experience in relationship, for example, and I come to dance, and through the dance and dancing with others, I'm able to heal that and connect again. And then growth, obviously, just expanding our awareness, our consciousness, our experience of life. And then never to forget that sometimes it's also just to express, just to say, like, this is me and I express myself. So the intentions here are just a few, but the list can be endless. And when we look at the intentions, then we relate back and say, okay, that's the experience I want to create. How do I go about it? And I use the elements and the qualities of elements to get there. So everyone will have their own intention for engaging with conscious dance. We don't all enter the room with the same intention, and we don't all enter the room with the same story, or the same state of mind, or the same body, or whatever. So everybody's dance will be unique in the room. So it's very, it is, unless you're a dance therapist, which I'm not, and you're working one-on-one with people, you're not going to engage with the individual. But what you can do is start to create the environment in which people explore and people connect with their own path. And obviously they will interpret it in their own way, and they will get out of it what they require. And sometimes it's not relevant, and sometimes it's deeply relevant. But so to achieve those intentions, because we are not being guided so much, we're not being guided individually, I think that awareness, and coming back to your own body awareness and your own movement awareness and what you're doing, and actively engaging with that, helps guide your own individual dance journey towards your own intention and your own outcome. And as I've been working with this in the last few months, I've really been exploring in a very physical way, because obviously a lot of the elements are based in physicality. I've been exploring things that were different for me, and things that I haven't been doing before. One of the things is to start working with movement that is kind of deep tissue dance, I call it, because it's going under the skin and into the body to move and dance there, which is really a very different experience to what we normally do externally or with the body. That's one thing. And then the other thing has been, for example, to start to look at combinations of my body movements that are different, or and purely through exploring and paying a little bit of attention. And just from myself, the moments when I have been doing that, especially I do it, when I'm not teaching so much. So maybe like in trance, or for example, I will experiment and play. The experience and the joy and the freedom that comes out of that is incredible, which is why I'm so keen to share this with everybody. But I don't know yet. I mean, I have the course, but I don't know in which other way one can actually, share it and then explain it. So the one can have a whole lot of different elements, but the ones that I've selected for today, just very quickly to introduce the topic, because it's really quite extensive, is these 5. So we have the body as an element of dance. We have action, the action that we do. We have the space in which we are dancing. We have the time, with the time within which we're dancing, and then we have the energy with which we put into the dance. So very briefly, the body is who is dancing. And sometimes the body can be 2. Sometimes, usually it's yourself. Sometimes it can be 2. Sometimes it can be 3. Sometimes it can be a group. And that's going to create a different who each time. Because when I'm on my own, there's a different phenomenological experience around the dance to when I am connected to somebody else or a group. So the action does what? What are we doing? The space is, where are we doing this, and where isn't like the studio or like my bedroom. Where is more than that. When, in time, and then the energy is the how do we do this. So I'm just going to give you really, really brief examples of each one of these. As I said, there's a lot more to it. So if you look at the body and you look at the individual, for example, you're going to have a very different experience when you are using a part of your body, which this man is doing deliberately, obviously, or whether you're using the whole body as a sort of beautiful pose from Martha Graham here. And this applies in the dance as well, because what happens when people who haven't been technically trained, and I don't think you need to be technically trained to do conscious dance, but if you haven't had formal dance training, what happens is people isolate, and they'll maybe just use their arms, or they might just use their legs. There'll be kind of whole areas of the body that are still, that are not moving. And to shift from that to where every single movement involves your whole body is quite a shift in terms of experience and what you get out of it. I said the other day, sometimes you can reach for something and you can just use your hand or your arm and that's it. And if you change that and you use your whole body, you move forward with your whole body and you twist your whole body and you turn and you reach. It's a completely different experience of reaching and taking something. That's just like a very simple example. And so the more one brings the whole body into the experience, it creates the amazing. So this is just like an example. And then related to that is like, where do you move from? And so again, very often people move from their extremities. So if you put a dance on and it's rhythmic, the rhythm happens in the arm. If you're lucky, it might happen in the shoulders, but basically it happens in the extremities. It'll happen in the legs, the feet, maybe, and the arms. But and then the whole body, and this is a very Western thing, the whole body stays like a solid block, and it moves, and then the arms, kind of do their thing, and the legs do their thing, and the body just stays there. But if you think that the movement of your arm doesn't start at your shoulder, for example, but it actually starts in the middle of your back. If you feel the connection from like a little space between your shoulder blades to the tip of your finger, and that you're moving from there out. That means you're moving from your core. So with the legs as well, if you can feel that your legs are connected, and that they don't stop at this joint at the top of your leg, but it actually goes all the way to your solar plexus, and to that area, and that you move from there. Moving from the core is a very different experience. And what it does is it then facilitates that whole body experience. So just looking at the body, I mean, and this is not difficult. This is just bringing a little bit of attention and awareness when you're dancing, and kind of like, and not all the time. I mean, it'd be horrible to be spending the whole class going, what am I doing? What am I doing? What am I doing? But every now and again, if one brings a little bit of mindfulness into the dance and says, okay, like, where am I moving from? How much of me is moving in the body? It makes a difference. Then the next one was action, and here it's really it seems to be obvious, and yet again very often people don't explore this. So there's certain actions. You can have an open action or a closed action. You can be rising, you can be sinking, you can be stretching, or you can be bending, or you can be twisting, or you can be linear. And for me, this what happens here is that very often people will I don't know who all these people are that dance so badly. Shame. I mean, that's a joke. Okay. People tend to dance the way they move in life. So it's kind of facing forward, upright, in a very particular kind of action that we used to. So it's kind of like we walk in this way. Whereas and then they dance this way. It's kind of like dance facing forward and dance facing upright and whatever. But if you can bring a little bit of mindfulness again and attention and say, like, actually, there are many ways in which I can do this. There are many ways in which maybe I can twist, maybe I can turn, maybe I can come up, maybe I can go down, maybe I can open, maybe I can close. Suddenly, there's a whole way, there's a whole different experience that arises out of that. When it comes to space, we can think of things like levels. We can think of high, we can think of low. Again, people, let's call them the people, tend to dance in the middle. It's kind of, again, at this level where I'm looking out and I'm relating to the world. How often do we go like to the lower world, underground, to the floor even? Very, 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 very few people will dance on the floor. If you don't tell them to, they'll always be upright. And also, how often do I go up? How often, at what level am I dancing? And am I using all the levels? Or am I just staying here in the middle somewhere? The other another aspect of space is about size. And this is really just, these are metaphors here, because, I mean, the pictures are metaphors, because we literally don't dance in a box or in space, but in our heads we do. Sometimes in our heads we create a really small box around us, and that's it. And very often we don't want to leave our box. We don't want to move to another part of the room or move one step to the left. It's just kind of like, ooh, that's uncomfortable, what's happening there. So what about the space we dance? Is it small? Is it contained? Is it confined? Or is it expanded? Am I willing to move around the room? Am I willing to move a little bit around my space? So how do I use space? How do I use the space around me? Time very often is dependent, no, I don't want to say dependent on the music, but very often is influenced by the music. And sometimes I have encouraged people when there's like strong, intense music to actually go slow, go with the slow, contained movement. It's been a little bit controversial there, especially at the last encounter I did. People didn't like that aspect. But if we are always going with exactly with the music, it's fine. But that's one experience or relationship to music. But what happens if you play with it? What happens if you move fast when the music is slow? What happens if you move slow when the music is fast? What happens when you play with this and you go across it? Totally different and new experiences. And then I love this picture. Apparently, in the 1920s and 30s, they had they had these marathon dances where people literally would collapse and fall asleep. They would just keep dancing and dancing. This is in America. They always do these crazy things in America. So I just thought that was quite interesting. But if you think about it, the duration of the dance, is it brief? Is it long? What are we doing now? A lot of that depends on where you are. A lot of that depends on the music and the facilitator. But from my aspect, what I'd like to point out is that we tend to be okay to dance for 2 to 3 minutes, and then then our minds kick in and we start getting bored. And I really love to use every now and again like a really long piece, something that's 6 minutes long. And I always say, if you're bored, it's your mind that's bored, it's not your body. And so the duration and the ability to move past boredom or the seeking of novelty and to drop into the body and to keep dancing a long dance creates also an amazing experience. Then the last one we're looking at is energy, and here it's the what do you do with the music, with the energy. By the way, these things are the qualities that we're looking at. So we're looking at the element, and these are qualities. So quality of energy is, it's sharp or smooth, or tight or loose, or heavy or light, or flow, staccato, or vigorous, or languid. They're all we can put the different energy into the same movement. I can reach out very slowly in one way, or I can really, give it a really sharp movement. That's going to create a different experience in my body and a different experience in the dance. So coming back to this, so the element, those 5 elements and the different qualities will create different experiences. And so I wanted to relate this back to the development of movement. So we learn how to move. We learn about the world as infants through movement. Okay, and there's different ways in which we learn. We learn through a thing called mimesis, which is where we literally copy somebody else, we copy the movement and we learn that way. We can learn through modeling. So, somebody will be doing something and we then model on that, and we create our behavior. And then there's explicit learning. So somebody will actually show us and teach us, and then we'll have the explicit learning. So this development, I think, from what I read, is part learned and part instinct. So I thought this picture was interesting and a little bit sad in a way, but this little baby who doesn't recognize, I don't know if it's a boy or girl, but doesn't recognize its mother with this mask on, then tries to hide from the mother. So this hiding hiding from this face, where does that come from? Is that an instinct, or did the child learn it? And but related to that is that the movement usually is associated with emotion. So when the child or the baby is learning something about the world and its relationship to the world and to experience and develop, those movements generally have an emotion associated with them. And what's interesting, and I'll use it to illustrate this, is that these body movements and emotions are reflected in our language and the way we speak, and they will tend to be the same. So for people, so it might not be in the particular. It might not be like I'm feeling exactly the same, but it's going to be generally in the same line. And it's quite interesting that there have been various studies that show that there are some basic movements and emotions that are cross-cultural. It's kind of doesn't matter where you belong, you will get it. And also with babies, that they understand this very, very quickly. So to be open, a gesture of opening, and now we're coming back to the elements. If I take my body and I open, gestures of open, to be open, we'll start to create an experience related to that, whether it's an experience of generosity, whether it's an experience of giving, whether it's an experience of loving. That is all dependent on the moment's intention and other, but it all is coming or can come from the movement. So if I want to feel this, I need to get my body open, to open up. And the same goes with closed, to be closed. We talk about, people who are sad or people who are depressed, that, they close down, people close down. So if I'm going to do that in my dance, if I'm going to keep myself contained and whatever, I'm going to be, I might not be making myself sad or depressed, but I'm certainly not encouraging something else, which is to be the openness and the joy and whatever. I love this little girl. She just seems like so, it's like, oh, but to be rigid. If I'm cross, I'm rigid. If I'm angry, I'm rigid. If I'm stuck, I'm rigid. And how we can, sorry. When I was talking earlier on about the body and using the whole body, so if I have a rigid torso and my arms are flaying around, moving, then I'm going to be stuck. If I start to bring more of my body into the dance, then I'm going to shift and I'm going to be less rigid. So these movements that the babies learn are, and which which we all have learned, not just, you know, we were all babies, are coping mechanisms or defense mechanisms, or um, the way we behave in the world. So it's a learned habitual patterns of behavior, and it's our way of negotiating the world. And we come into the dance studio, into the dance space with this pattern, with our own coping mechanisms. It's ingrained into our body. So what do we want to do? We want to rewrite the story. We want to free ourselves from experiencing the world in the same way each time. And the way we can do it, and so dance can help to rewrite the script. So we can learn new ways of being by experiencing different movement patterns. And the way we're going to experience the different movement patterns is going to be through bringing attention and intention to conscious dance, to our dance. So we don't always do the same old, that we will expand our experience through expanding our movement. Now, just to end off, very interesting, there's been a lot of research around the posture and gesture and movement, but posture and gesture around creating experience, and these three I chose because they kind of talk about ecstatic trance and ecstasy and altered states of consciousness through body postures. Okay, these are people, I mean, this woman, Felicitas Goodman, she's done a lot of work. She's no longer with us. She did a lot of work around this, like really traveling around the world to really document what are archetypal postures that people use in different situations. And so we extend that into movement. So it doesn't just have to be postures, but what if we start to move in different ways? So this man here is, I don't know, he looks to be like a tiger or something. So the postures, the gestures, the movements then are used to create, to induce the experience, which is what I was pointing out right at the beginning when I said an internal locus of induction. And so one can, just as an example, you know, we can use and we use a lot of different ways in dance. We use imagery, we use metaphors, we use all sorts of ways in which we can work. But one of the ways in which I think a lot of indigenous cultures have worked, and I personally believe is the way that dance has developed, is through animal observation of animal movement. So if we look at animals and we use this as a model for exploring, well, this is just one example, we can see that what we do is there is a progression in how we explore this. So the first thing is the way that we learned as babies, through mimesis. So, and these are elements. If I look at a cat, or I look at a tiger, and I say, okay, like, how's it moving its arms? How's it moving its body? What is the mechanics of that? And then I look at the quality of that movement. So the quality, let's take a cat and a dog, or a bird and a snake, you know, they're going to have different quality of movement, which will give a different expression. So I take that little formula I showed you, the element, which is to the mimesis, and we take the expression, and then that would lead to an experience. And so the thing is that for me, this also reflects a progressivity in the way in which we engage with conscious dance. When we first engage with the dance, we really are miming, mimetic. We kind of just copy. There comes a point in which we start to explore and express the qualities. But beyond that, there comes a time when all of that is embodied and our dance no longer looks like the animal, but it is the animal. It actually becomes a whole embodiment. So I just thought this was an example of this. So as I said, it's, you know, there's obviously a lot more to this, but this is just an overview of how the elements and qualities of those elements produce experience. A little bit why it comes from the way we learned as infants, and it comes also from our evolution as human beings, where those bodies, those postures, those movements can induce experience which are quite universally recognized. And that's it. Thank you, which is